Saludos a todos. Voy a hablarles en español, pero la versión en inglés de este mensaje estará disponible en mi página web. Aunque no pude estar con ustedes personalmente para dialogar sobre promesa, una de las medidas legislativas congresionales más importantes que haya sido aprobada sobre Puerto Rico, les felicito por llevar a cabo esta conferencia, porque demuestra que ustedes comprenden la trascendencia que tiene esta ley. Si la Junta de Supervisión Federal, compuesta por 7 miembros, los líderes electos de Puerto Rico, los acreedores de nuestro gobierno y toda la gente buena y talentosa del sector privado trabajan unidos en espíritu de colaboración, yo estoy convencido de que actuando bajo el marco legal de promesa, podemos comenzar a enderezar el rumbo de nuestra querida isla, mejorar la calidad de vida de nuestra gente y detener la migración masiva hacia los estados. El éxito claramente requerirá mucho trabajo y sacrificio, pero en la vida nada que verdaderamente valga la pena es fácil. Les hablaré brevemente sobre un aspecto de promesa, específicamente la sección 409 de la ley, la cual establece un grupo especial de trabajo congresional, bicameral y bipartidista, que entre otras cosas explorará maneras en que el gobierno federal pueda ayudar a promover el desarrollo económico de Puerto Rico. Me honra haber sido nombrado a este Task Force por la líder cameral demócrata Nancy Pelosi. El Task Force ya ha comenzado el proceso de recopilación de información de parte de expertos y de todos los interesados y elaborará un informe final antes del 31 de diciembre de este año. Como parte del proceso de recopilación de información, el Task Force creó una cuenta de correo electrónico prtaskforce@mail.house.gov, a la cual personas o instituciones pueden enviar sus recomendaciones por escrito. Ya hemos recibido cientos de propuestas y si alguno de ustedes tiene alguna propuesta específica que entienda puede ser útil para el Task Force, le exhorto a que nos la envíe lo antes posible. Es importante recordar que el Task Force se concentrará en los pasos que el gobierno federal, ya sea en el Congreso o la rama ejecutiva, puede y debe tomar para promover el desarrollo económico de Puerto Rico. Sabemos que hay muchas cosas que el gobierno de Puerto Rico debe y tiene que hacer, pero ese no será el enfoque del informe del Task Force. Por lo tanto, si van a someter propuestas por escrito, es importante que se aseguren de que estén dirigidas a potenciales acciones federales y no locales. Desde que fui nombrado al Task Force, he sido cuidadoso de no decir mucho públicamente sobre lo que entiendo que el Task Force debe recomendar en su informe final, dado que estaremos haciendo un esfuerzo por lograr consenso. Este es mi 8º año en el Congreso y tengo una visión bien clara de cómo la política pública federal debe ser modificada en diversas áreas para ayudar a Puerto Rico. He radicado decenas de proyectos de ley sobre estos asuntos, algunos de los cuales se han convertido en ley y otros no. Mi visión personal no es un secreto, pero el Task Force tiene 8 miembros, cada uno de ellos con su propia perspectiva y creencia ideológica. Lo que importa en el análisis final no es lo que yo creo o lo que los senadores Hatch o Rubio creen, o lo que los congresistas Duffy, MacArthur o Velázquez creen, o lo que los senadores Menéndez y Nelson creen, pero sí lo que podamos acordar como grupo. Definitivamente, estaré abogando por las acciones que apoyo, con la meta de convencer a mis colegas que el curso de acción que propongo hace sentido desde una perspectiva moral y práctica, y asumo que ellos trabajarán para persuadirme de lo mismo. Habrá por necesidad un toma y dame, negociaciones y acuerdos, pero yo no claudicaré en mis principios y no apoyaré acción alguna que entienda pueda hacerle daño a Puerto Rico y a sus 3.4 millones de ciudadanos americanos, que merecen más, tanto del gobierno federal como de su gobierno local. Finalmente, como todos ustedes saben, creo firmemente que el estatus de Puerto Rico como territorio de Estados Unidos es la raíz de los problemas económicos y fiscales de nuestra isla, que por su naturaleza son estructurales y persistentes, y no cíclicos o temporeros. Ningún pueblo en la historia ha prosperado o alcanzado su máximo potencial mientras haya sido tratado con injusticia y desigualdad. Y Puerto Rico no es ni será la excepción a esa regla. Si Puerto Rico no desea continuar como territorio, tiene dos, y solo dos opciones. Puede convertirse en una nación soberana o en un estado de la Unión Americana. Ambas opciones de estatus son dignas y democráticas, pero solo la estabilidad tiene el apoyo de la mayoría de los residentes de Puerto Rico. Y la estabilidad, a mucho mayor grado que la soberanía nacional, va a mejorar la calidad de vida de Puerto Rico. Definitivamente, le haré claras estas posiciones a mis colegas en el Task Force y veremos lo que forme parte del informe final que esté relacionado a nuestro estatus político. Pero irrespectivo de lo que diga o no el Task Force, el camino hacia adelante es claro. En el 2014, a instancias mías, el Congreso aprobó una ley que autoriza la primera votación de estatus avalada por el gobierno federal en nuestra historia, que asigna $2.5 millones para ese proceso y requiere que el Departamento de Justicia de Estados Unidos apruebe de antemano la papeleta y los materiales educativos, lo que le dará gran peso moral y político a los resultados de ese voto. Ahora está en manos de Puerto Rico seguir el camino que ha establecido el Congreso, idealmente realizando un proceso en el que podamos votar sí o no sobre la estabilidad, igual que se hizo en Hawái y en Alaska antes de que se convirtieran en estados. Muchas gracias a todos y les deseo mucho éxito en esta conferencia.
I have the honor of presenting our invited keynote speaker on this occasion. Simon Johnson is Ronald Aker's 1954 Professor of Entrepreneurship at the MIT Sloan School of Management, where he also head of the Global Economic and Management Group, a member of the Executive Personnel Committee, and chair of the Sloan Fellows MBA Program Committee. He co-founded and currently leads a popular global entrepreneurship course, working with startups companies around the world. Johnson is also a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C., a co-founder of BaseLinkScenario.com, a member since inception of the FDIC Systematic Resolution Advisory Committee. He has also been a member of a private sector systematic risk council since it was founded by Sarah Blair in 2012. In July 2014, he joined the Financial Research Advisory Committee of the United States Treasury Office of Financial Research. From April 2009 to April 2015, he was member of the Congressional Budget Office panel of economic advisors. For this articulate and outspoken support for the public policy and aim to the bid to fail, Johnson was named a Main Street Hero by the Independent Community Bankers of America in 2013. In April 2015, the Washington Examiner placed Johnson as 11 on their list of the new voice for 2015. Over the past 7 years, Johnson has published more than 300 high-impact pieces in the New York Times, Bloomberg, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, the New Republic, Business Week, the Huffington Post, the Financial Times, and Project City. The Quick Call received over 1 million views when he appeared at the Atlantic in early 2009. He booked 13 banks, the Wall Street Takeover, and the next financial notion with James Watt. Was an immediate bestseller, and it has become one of the most highly regarded books of the financial crisis. Therefore, a book of the United States Fiscal Policy, White House Burning, the Founding Fathers, our nation's debt and why this matters for you won praise across the political spectrum. From March 2007 through the end of August 2008, Johnson, as the International Monetary Fund's Economic Council Chief Economist and Director of its research department. He also helped found and run the Ever African Project, 4 volumes are forthcoming from the University of Chicago Press. Johnson holds a PA in Economics and Politics from the University of Oxford and Master in Economics from the University of Manchester, and I have a PhD in Economics from MIT. Without further, I leave you with MIT Professor of Global Economic and Management and former International Monetary Fund, the Chief Economist, Dr. Simon Johnson. Please, Dr.
Thanks very much for the kind words of introduction, which I guess I wrote, so next time I'll write a shorter version. Sorry about that. So I am, among other things, a former chief economist at the International Monetary Fund, and I spent my professional life, about 30 years, working on economic and financial crises around the world, including, I have to say, unfortunately, last decade, a lot of focus on the United States. And let me be very clear about one thing for today. I am not here to tell you what to do. Okay, absolutely not. I did that in my IMF job. I think you have plenty of people telling you what to do now. I would like to share with you some thoughts about your situation and some comparisons, or maybe partial comparisons with other experiences that we've seen around the world, in order to help you make up your own minds about what needs to be done and what will come next in Puerto Rico. And let me divide my remarks into 3 parts. First of all, I'm going to be actually rather positive and optimistic with due respect to the difficulties of your current situation. Secondly, I'm going to say some things very specifically targeted to a discussion we haven't actually heard today. I think that the conference has been terrific, but I haven't heard people really drill down into the topic of austerity, and I want to spend a few minutes on that with you. And then I want to focus mostly on growth, which is, I think, exactly what you've been focused on today, and quite rightly. And I've heard some terrific ideas, and I'd like to kick a few more ideas around with you before continuing. So first of all, why am I feeling optimistic or positive in this situation? Now, I should absolutely emphasize, I really understand this is a very difficult debt situation. I think by far the most difficult debt situation of this scale we've seen in the United States. It ranks with some of the most difficult and complex sovereign debt situations that the world has had to confront over the past 50 years. And I also understand that with that disruption of public finance, you have huge problems associated with pensions, you have big problems that spill over not just to all public sector workers and to many people who live very low incomes, but also to all of you, to the entire private sector. So I am not at all playing down the difficulties that you face. And I also recognize, and perhaps I would even emphasize, the darkness of these current days. And perhaps, well, the disruption of this conference, or the fact that many people who wanted to attend couldn't attend, I hope ends up meaning nothing, because I hope everyone will study this on the web, and I hope they'll read your very good materials and so on. That's certainly what I'm going to recommend people to do. But perhaps it also stands as a symbol for some of the anxiety and some of the fear that people have in this society about what the crisis consequences will be. Now, we've talked about various countries today. Sam made some places. Sam made some very good points about Detroit. Argentina was brought up also as a parallel. The country that I think about a lot in crisis situations is actually South Korea. South Korea had a booming economy in the 1990s. South Korea was hit by what they regarded as a very sudden and unfair crisis in 1997. It was too much debt, way too much debt. And at the end of 1997, there was a dramatic crisis that had a profound, difficult social impact across all of Korean people. My wife's family is from Korea. She's Korean American. Our children are Korean American, but we have very, very close ties. And the national trauma of that moment, end of 1997, early 1998, really cannot be exaggerated. But also, what I have to impress upon you is the way in which the Korean people pulled together, the way in which they figured out what they needed to do. By the way, they were also there was no control board type situation, that didn't apply. But the program of support provided by the International Monetary Fund was considered to be overly harsh, too restrictive, not supportive enough. And frankly, we could have a very interesting discussion in retrospect about whether the IMF could have done a better job in Korea. So this was not that they got a fantastic bailout or support from the international community, not at all. And that was not the Korean view at the time. But they came through it because they focused on growth. And they thought about not just surviving the next 3 to 6 months, which are always an issue in these situations, but how do you rebuild an economy using your strengths? Good point Sam made this morning. You are not Detroit. You have a lot of strengths and opportunities, and you can have, and I think you will have, strong growth here. Again, you also have another reason why optimism. You have a lot of friends in other parts of the United States who really want to help. Now, it's true they didn't want to give you much money in the last round. I understand that. I follow these discussions in Washington very closely. I think Representative Pedro Pierluisi did a really good job of representing your interests. You wanted, or the government wanted, a Chapter 9 type bankruptcy. That was the ask, and the response from the politicians, from Congress was, well, if you want that, it will come with some form of oversight, an oversight board of some kind. And you know, it's not perfect. No political compromise ever can be perfect. But I think actually this was a remarkable, as Speaker Ryan said this morning, a remarkable compromise and a real opportunity for you. Nothing for sure is guaranteed in this situation. No good outcomes are guaranteed. Also no bad outcomes are guaranteed. But it is a definite opportunity that you've been provided with. And I would say this friendship and this goodwill goes further. So I come back to this at the end. I think after November, there will be opportunities to ask for additional forms of assistance, or we might call it fairness, that's fine, for Puerto Rico, but fairness that has a price tag. You will need to decide, I would suggest, on your priorities. What exactly, I mean, yes, it's a long list, I understand, but what are your top 3 or 5 issues? And I think I heard them actually mentioned already this morning. But there are many people who really will try hard to help you, I think, as we go forward. So that's grounds for general optimism. So let me make my points about austerity. And I think here I'd like to sound a note of caution. Now, you must excuse me if this doesn't resonate with you, if you feel that you've already moved on and this is not the focus of current attention. But I think it will come up again, frankly, if you haven't yet fully experienced it. And this is the discussion, the debate that we sum up in the word austerity. Now, to be clear, and you have to be very clear, because this word means different things to different people, I am absolutely on the side of people saying that you need stronger fiscal controls. I'm afraid I think you said repeatedly this morning, the way in which your budget was run, both the expenditure side and on the tax side, was not state-of-the-art, shall we say. And there is tremendous scope for improvement there, and that will absolutely happen, I am convinced. It'll be driven by your government. I think this is just an overwhelming need. But the question of austerity is going to be, to what extent should the government prioritize in its fiscal plan? And as has been said clearly, it's the government's and the governor's fiscal plan that drives the agenda here. I actually I wrote a short article for Eldia, in which there was a mistranslation of, I used the word supervisory board, and it was translated as control board. And they were very kind enough to correct that once we spotted that in the translation. You have a supervisory board, not a day-to-day control board. That's not the design. I understand the political future is always clouded. The design is not that they will run your affairs. The designers, they will oversee this and they will supervise, including on issues of public finance. But to what extent will your fiscal plan prioritize firing people, cutting wages? Obviously cutting the minimum wage is been put on the table. That could be a public sector, private sector issue. And cutting pensions. These are very real choices that you will confront. And what I would stress to you, or at least as an outsider, as a complete outsider, and I work for nobody in this matter except MIT and the Peterson Institute and various other committees that are kind enough not to pay me any money, run by the US government. So when I look at this, and when I try to think about your situation compared to other places and other countries, what strikes me is what you all know completely, intuitively. It's the first thing probably comes to your minds. But it's not the first thing that always comes to people's minds in Washington, D.C. All of your residents are US citizens, and all of them can and will move to the 50 states if they think there's an incentive to do that. So if you're talking about, for example, cutting the minimum wage, South Korea, by the way, had a big currency depreciation. The currency depreciation does reduce your wage measured in dollar terms. That was part of how Korea got back onto its growth path. Okay? But if you talk about cutting the minimum wage in Puerto Rico, what would that do to people's incentives to stay here or to leave? I think your tax base will get on the plane and fly to Florida or Texas or Pennsylvania or New York. So you have to be very aware of this, and I think the politicians, if you agree with me, and you can tell me that I'm wrong about this, of course, but if you agree, I think this is a point you should be reiterating repeatedly with everyone in Washington who is paying attention to this matter. I think austerity in general, well, I know that austerity in general is never a policy pursued by any government that has a choice. The US didn't pursue, or tried to minimize its austerity after 2008. The Europeans, where possible, have tried to minimize their austerity. This is the huge argument that the IMF has with countries around the world every time there's some sort of financial crisis. Austerity has a lot of knock-on negative consequences. If you cut people's pensions, you're cutting the spending power on the island. If you're firing people from jobs where they felt secure, if that's the first impact of these changes, again, why would they spend? Right? You're increasing uncertainty. They don't want to buy consumer durables in that situation. So, changing the path of public expenditure, absolutely. Having robust, resilient tax revenues, proper tax collection, makes a lot of sense. But focusing on austerity and making that really the spearhead of the fiscal plan, I think would be inadvisable. I think that this is my third and last point. I think where you need to be is what I've heard, at least from the people who came today, people who spoke today, what I heard, which is growth. You want to get back to growth. You have, somebody said 4%. It's an interesting number. Perhaps that's the right number, I don't know. You want to get back to growth. How do you get back to growth? What are the mechanisms and what are the projects through which you can get there? And I think the idea of public-private partnerships, the kind of Chamber of Commerce agenda, is very appealing. Now, it does require financing. It requires access to financing. How do you get back there? Somebody said government guarantees. I did start to feel a little bit nervous. Right? You have had a variety of financing mechanisms used here to finance activities that sometimes are fully public sector. Guarantees need to be controlled and guarantees need to be managed, and I think that's an important part of that conversation. But absolutely investment, deciding what are the high priority investments, which ones, what kind of jobs they generate, what kind of jobs and for whom, both as the projects are as they're implemented and down the road as they affect the broader economy. That's exactly the right kind of agenda. You don't have a foreign currency crisis. You don't have a balance of payments crisis. You have a wage crisis or a standard of living crisis because your young people, the skilled people, can leave. Now, the flip side of that, the good news is, of course, they can come back. So you should be asking, and I think you are asking the right questions, which is, what would bring them back? Why would they locate their business, their startup, their activities in Puerto Rico compared to New York, for example, or Miami? I also really like the benchmarking that you talked about, where you look around the world and around the United States at places that have figured out some piece of this. So we mentioned Chile and also Florida this morning. I think that's really, really constructive and helpful. And I think you should be saying that in Washington repeatedly and continually, as well as in Puerto Rico. Look, communication is key to all of this. So communication is partly about understanding where you are. It's about recognizing the problems. I think you've absolutely got that one under control. And it's about having an organized discussion and debate, which is exactly what you're having today, and that's why I came. And then it's about communicating, and it's about talking to various people who are your stakeholders and who need to listen to you, including people in Washington. You know, I have paid a lot of attention to this issue over the past year in Washington. And as I said, I think Pedro and others have done a really good job of elevating the importance of this issue, and you did get political attention when you needed it. But this has to be sustained. You are going to have pressing problems and questions, including on the funding side of Medicaid, but much more broadly, as again we talked about this morning. You need people to think about, what is Puerto Rico trying to do? Where does this go? Why would people on the outside believe that you're going to get the growth? Well, the more you can point to specific places and instances, Florida or somewhere else, and say, look what they did there, look how they turned it around, look how they became a pro-business place. The growth is led by the private sector. The public sector is having a healthy public sector is an important part of that. That's also what I heard today. That's exactly right. And it generates jobs. It generates jobs that pay good incomes, that support people's families, and we're going to fund the pension system. And I know you have a particular thorny set of problems with that, but we're going to fund a pension system going forward that's going to be sustainable. That is what I believe you're going to do. And I am completely convinced that you will turn this around by yourselves, and Puerto Ricans will lead this recovery, and it will be an amazing and remarkable success. I know there are going to be some difficult and dark days. I am among the people who would like to help you through those days, and I'm open to any and all ideas about how to do that. But I think you will do this for yourselves and by yourselves, and that's appropriate. And I think focusing on growth and telling people how you're going to get that growth and demonstrating as you get that growth, how this vision is being implemented, that is going to be tremendously helpful to you. So, that's all I have to say. I wish you very best for the endeavor ahead. And thank you for your attention. And if you would like to have some question and answer in the context of this kind of discussion, feel free. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Yes, Carlos?
Dr. Johnson, really enjoyed your presentation. I would like to know what, at the end of the day, did South Korea end up doing to overcome the crisis and get back into the high-growth economic position that they have enjoyed since?
So South Korea focused, so the question is, what did South Korea do to get back to growth and to sustain the growth subsequently? So South Korea pushed for exports. Now this is obviously a particular kind of economy. They could have a depreciation of the exchange rate, something that's not open to you. They had a fairly export-oriented economy to start with, but they had borrowed a lot of money, actually mostly in the private sector, in the chaebol, in the Korean business groups. They'd over-leveraged, and they had bet on stability and steady growth. They were hit by some relatively small shocks from what people now call the Asian financial crisis, and that caused their external financing to dry up. Large depreciation of the exchange rate, they kept the budget under control, they had a tight monetary policy, they got exports up, and then, as this point was made this morning, just like you get the negative spiral on the way down, people leave, you lose tax base, healthcare goes down, inequality, people leave. Once you start to ride it up and you get the growth, and people believe in the growth, tax base is rising, you can support public infrastructure, it encourages people to come back. So they rode that upward spiral very well, and I would say they were also, they learned some difficult lessons and they consolidated. They prevented the people who borrowed too much previously from doing the same thing again, and they were generally pretty cautious, or even very cautious on their public finances. So, it's not a path that you can take because you don't have the exchange rate here. But on the other hand, you do have a very open economy. You're very connected to other parts of the United States. You have been and you should become a very attractive destination for inward investment, large and small. And I think that's exactly what the Chamber of Commerce is trying to lay out. In fact, that's what I understood to be your the non-profit organization that is a form of, in other contexts we call it export promotion or inward investment promotion. That's exactly the right kind of strategy. Get more people to come in, more capital to come in, more companies to come in, and link what's here better with other parts of the United States. I think that's the track that you're on. But of course it's different because Puerto Rico is a special place.
Thank you. Another question? Yes?
In economics, there's the concept of high-powered money, and we've heard a number of presentations this morning that talked about some public-private partnerships and investments that can be made. Are there any concepts in your experience in other areas around the world where high-powered projects have occurred that have allowed an economy to, that are specific and that are the types of projects that drive that economic growth?
Yeah, sure. Catalysts, projects that are catalysts, absolutely. Around the port, for example, that's the kind of catalyst that people use in East Asia for a long time. Singapore, Vietnam, now Myanmar is thinking about following similar kinds of strategy. The trick is, of course, and you guys know this very well, to avoid the white elephant trap. The idea that, this is going to be a huge prestige item without necessarily thinking through who pays for it, initially, and what the actual benefits are for the broader economy. So, if the private sector can't figure this out, I don't know who can. You have every incentive to get this right, and I would hope that this exact kind of thinking can go into the fiscal plan. A very important point was made. So what's the difference between having a supervisory board and having a bankruptcy process overseen by a federal bankruptcy judge, for example, which is probably what would have happened going down the other route? Well, this supervisory board is responsible for getting you back to growth. That is the mandate. And in that mandate, there's specific language that says you should have capital investments. So this is not a cut to the bone, don't invest, rebalance the budget with 1.5 million residents. That's not what this is about. But then the question is, what really are the priorities? To what extent, you must have widely ranging views within the chamber, for example, within this room. Can you hammer that out? Can you really get down to what's going to have big economic impact? And I don't think anyone from the outside is going to be able to tell you that. That's stuff you've got to be able to figure out for yourselves. I'm sure you can. But if you can get to that process, and then figure out how to finance it, but remember, as the growth comes back, the finance, and as you go through the restructuring, again, dark days, no doubt ahead, but as you go through that financing comes back and gets easier. But you can also, you could load on the wrong projects, if you were so minded. No question. There's nothing that says that what you do in the recovery phase necessarily leads to sustained growth. That you will get those opportunities again, and I'm optimistic based on what I've heard over the past year and what I've heard this morning that you'll make good use of it. But there's no question you've got to get that right.
Thank you. The last question? Yes?
Could you address the default on Puerto Rico's constitutional debt on July 1st? And do you think that was the right choice? And do you think it's made the Oversight Board's job of regaining market access any harder?
All right, so the question is about the default on July 1st and whether it makes getting market access harder. Look, I don't think anybody ever went into this kind of situation wanting to default on debt. That's not what the borrowers want, and that's not what the lenders want, and it's certainly not what the U.S. Congress wants. The question is, what are the alternatives? The position taken by the U.S. Treasury, and I think on this issue they're right, is that all the debt needs to be on the table with with regard to debt restructuring, but it doesn't mean that all the debt is equal seniority. That's the first point. The second point is the legislation clearly says, and I think it's everyone's intention, that there'll be a voluntary debt restructuring, and you know, we'll see who is, we'll see what people's attitudes are with that. We'll see who wants to negotiate and who doesn't. Obviously, there's some mechanisms for pulling people on board with negotiated deals. But I think when you borrowed this much money, and really Puerto Rico borrowed a lot relative to its capacity to pay, you have to have a moratorium, which is what you have right now. You have to have an assessment of what your medium-term growth prospects are. You have to have a realistic view of growth coming back, right? And think about ways to share those benefits. I would personally advocate, but I understand this position. This is not a position that will necessarily win the day. I would personally advocate creditors in all of these kinds of situations. So it's not specifically Puerto Rico, but in any kind of crisis recovery situation, I think creditors should get more indexed bonds that are indexed to actual economic performance, so that as the economy comes back, you get more, and it aligns people's incentives much better. Now, there's a number of problems with that, including many times people don't trust the way the indices are constructed. I get that. That's been an issue in Argentina, Greece, and Ukraine. But this is part of the United States. And in addition, there's a very sensible agenda, I think, being put forward by the task force, among others, or being considered by the task force, which is that the Puerto Rico should become much better integrated into the statistical apparatus of the United States. So you're not, economic activity here is not surveyed in the same way as it is comprehensively as the 50 states. Well, I think that's something that should change. That's a sensible aspect of economic activity. It would also give you reliable measures of what's happening in Puerto Rico that are not under the control of anybody in Puerto Rico. They're run by the Bureau of Economic Statistics, for example, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that would give you opportunities to index to indices that you cannot tamper with. That's my recommendation. I think creditors, under those specific circumstances, will get a better deal. And they'll get to share more of the upside. I would not be surprised if that's not actually the way the debt restructuring plays out.
Thank you. We want to thank Dr. Simon Johnson on behalf of all members, the private sector, and of all our. We very much appreciate your having taken the time to be with us today in the very important event for the economic development for the island. I want now to invite the chairman of the conference, Promesa, Paco, and David, the president, both of them, please. This way, we finalize the protocol act of our conference luncheon. Once again, thank you, Dr. Johnson, for having been with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to continue with our next special plenary session. Please proceed. Okay, Pepe told me that we have to announce that we have a plenary session. How will the elect governor operate with the Federal Puerto Rico Fiscal Oversight Board? Okay? Having said that, please proceed to the grand ballroom. We kindly request that you help us by moving properly. Thank you.
Sorry, hey, how are you? It's good to see you, sir. Yeah. How you been? Good. I stayed in. Yeah, when I woke up, I heard the chanting at 6 o'clock. One of the journalists, they got dropped off by a boat. There was like, they called them the Battle 7. They were 7 people on them.
Wow, that's amazing. Finally made it. Pero yo estuve ahí un rato, I was standing out there, and I tried to walk in, mira, me brincaron encima.
So far, so good. Some good information. I think the control board looks professional, not political.
Do you know it? Did you know Carlos Garcia?
I didn't. I never got to meet any. I don't personally know anybody.
No, pero yo conozco.
That's the one that seems to be the most specific.
Well, shoot, he was president of GDP.
He was on the fraternity.